Fighting Sail, Fleet Actions from 1775 to 1815 by Ryan Miller, part of the Osprey Blue Book series. Today we're going to do a mini game, the frigate duel. We've got two ships, each worth 30 points, but they are very different from each other. This, with the bright white sails, is it's a Portuguese fifth rate. It's going to roll 7 sailing dice. He's only got 4 gunnery dice, but he is a marksman, so he will re-roll ones. He's only got a hull of 2. This is the Dutch fourth rate. He only gets 5 sailing dice. However, he re-rolls ones, and he has guns of 5, hull of 4, really robust. So what we're going to do today is a little bit of a chase. Given the fact that you've got, and I don't know who's going to be in the front and who's going to be in the back. Let's figure that out first, and I'll show you how we're going to do a chase. It's going to be a little different. I think you're going to like this presentation. Today we are going to adopt a more ship's eye view, and the question is, who is the pursued and who is the pursuer? We're going to roll 2d6, and I'm going to have to tilt it after I roll it to show you what the results are. Whoever rolls higher will be the pursuer. We get a 6 and we get a 5. So our big fourth rate is going to be chasing down our little bitty fifth rate. And I'm going to separate them by 8 inches. The game will end by 8 inches. That's 4 sailing points. I take it back. We're only going to go 3. The wind has been... They're both running at this point, and the wind shifts. And to figure out how the wind shifts at the start of turn number 1, this is where the game comes in. To figure out how the wind shifts at the start of turn 1, we're going to roll the white die is going to be how many points to the port it shifts. And the black die will be how many points to the starboard. So it shifts 5 points to the port and 1 point to starboard. In other words, 5 points to starboard. I should have pointed out, there's only 8 points, right? This is what your compass rose looks like in Fighting Sail. So if we count 5 points, it would be 1 diagonally this way, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the wind, which had been directly behind them, suddenly adjusts, and now these ships are going to be close-hauled to start the game, which will complicate things greatly, and who knows, perhaps our plucky little fifth rate will decide to turn about and take on the fourth rate in a battle. If this ship can put, let's call it 16 inches between itself and the Dutch fourth rate, then he will have escaped. One last thing I should mention, you're probably wondering what these yellow dice, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, are doing on the table. Well, at the start of every turn after the first, I'm going to drop first a fog bank, then a shoal, then an island on turn 4, and then another shoal on the beginning of turn 5. And I'm going to leave the camera here, and we're basically just going to be engaged in a stern chase. So at the start of every turn, I'm just going to reset our big boy back to here, and we'll pivot everything around so that we can see. I think you get the idea after we do this first turn. But to do that, we have to establish initiative. And when you are doing this little mini game, this frigate duel, it is whichever ship is furthest downwind gets the initiative. Starting with the player who controls the ship with the main mast furthest downwind. So in this case, he's going to get the initiative because the wind shifted from due south to a northeasterly direction. We're going to have to roll for sailing for the Dutch ship first. Kind of. When you're doing a frigate duel, initiative works. Whoever's furthest downwind, of course, we've established that that's this guy. He gets to go first. But you roll these sailing dice simultaneously, and then you start doing maneuvers alternating. We've got 5 sailing dice here, re-rolling ones, versus 7 sailing dice here. So white dice for the white flags. And everybody is going to be, if you look at our turn template here, the 5 up. This is not great for filming, is it? The 5 up, at least you can see the lights I'm using. That's close hauled. There we go. Everybody's close hauled. They are only going to get sailing points on 5s. The little Portuguese ship gets a total of 3, and the Dutch fourth rate gets a pair, so he can do whatever he wants. Now, he can turn up to 90 degrees if he's turning with the wind. And I think that may be the smart play here. That we put him here, and we're going to bring him around something like this so that he becomes... We're going to swing him. He's still... We're going to keep him close. Well, what do we do? That's only 1 sailing point. I think that's pretty good. And then our fifth rate is going to sail a total of 6 inches away. He says, fine, if you're going to do that, I'm going to go 6 inches. Well, wait a minute. That's not... Well, he's going to move once. Then this old boy, the Dutch, will move up their second sailing point, and then they move pow-pow. Now, what that means is we are going to get to blast them. We do have some cannon-fired dice. The Dutch have a total gunnery skill of 5, so we roll 5 dice, and we should check the range on that. Measuring center mast to center mast, we are at 9.5 inches. At 9.5 inches, you are going to be at long range. You're going to be hitting on 4s with explosions on 6s. So we roll our 5 dice for the gunnery of 5, and we get a total of 1 hit. And 1 hit on our damage deck is disrupted. The ship gets an anchor token. Which may be critical in this game, because it means on this next turn... Oh, I already said, you can ignore that. That's the end of turn 1. Then on the start of turn 2, we have to do our fun little terrain feature. Number 3, oh, he needed that. The fog is going to appear right there. Let me talk about what I did here. We are not playing to the end of the table, remember. We're playing until this guy put 16 inches of distance between the two. So I scooted everything 3 inches due south, and that's where turn number 2 will begin. We'll do a little rack focus so you can see how close he is to that fog bank. And then we'll go ahead and roll our dice. As usual, it will be 7 dice for the little guy. 2, 4, 6, 7. And it'll be 5 dice. That's all the colored dice for the guy in... It's 5 dice for him, 7 dice, white sails, and he gets to re-roll the 2 1s that he rolled. So he gets a total of... He gets a 4, 5, and 5. He is still close hauled, so he's only going to get sailing points on 5s. So he gets 2 sailing points because the Portuguese have this anchor token. They only get sailing points on a 6, and they didn't get a single one this time, which means he is going to be free to move first 2 inches up, and then he will move... I think we'll move him another 2 inches up, and then we'll kind of start to close the gap there. All right, so at the end of the sailing phase, that's when he has to make a sailing check to see if he can get rid of that anchor token. And is it sailing or is it discipline? I think it's sailing. Let me roll. Well, let's check before we roll. That does require a discipline check, and the Portuguese have a discipline of 5. Any 6, they get none, so they are still stuck with that anchor token for the next turn. It is now time for gunnery, and checking our line of sight, they have no shot. The 4th rate does have a shot, and this time the range is going to be 8 inches. So once again, they're going to be rolling for 5s, hitting on 4s, having a second chance. Again, they only get 1 hit, which is enough to give the ship a token, an anchor token, but it already has one, so that 1 hit does no effect. Luckily for them. Now we have our second piece of terrain. A shoal is going to show up, and it's going to show up at number 5, right about there. I think it's important to note that we need to move everybody first and then drop our terrain piece down. That gives us an extra, couple of inches to play with there. Otherwise, they're just going to pile up on each other. We are ready to roll sailing dice. It's going to be 7 white dice, 5 colored dice. The colored dice get a reroll. On the ones, everybody... Now, he's hitting on 5s. He only gets a single success. So 1 sailing point for the Portuguese. But these 7 dice, only 6s count. He doesn't get a single 6. He does not get to move. Since he's done with the sailing, he's got to make a discipline check on 5 dice. And he gets the 6. So at least they're able to get their act together. And they are still close-hauled. But because they are in irons, they only get to move the couple of inches. So that means the only sailing point on the table is our Dutch 4th rate, who moves up to here. And then, has he closed to within 6 inches? He is not, but he does get to open fire with all 5 cannons. And our poor little Portuguese don't have a fire. They need 1 sailing point so they can turn and start returning fire. Gunnery skill of 5, hitting on 4s, they get 1, 2, 3 hits. And because they are at medium range, these get to reroll with the potential of hitting again. So we will once more roll, and on 4s or better, so they get a total of 4 hits. When you do 4 hits on your enemy that is heavy damage, the ship gets 2 damage tokens and an anchor token. And now they're in big trouble. Kadoosh, kadoosh. Blasting just like that. And they still do not have any chance to return fire. So, we roll for the next piece of terrain. Man, there's a lot of it all in the same place. And we get a 4, which means it's going to appear, well, let's move everybody the 2 inches first. And then we'll drop an island just past that shoal. For the record, I moved everybody in every terrain back 2 inches and over 2 inches. And when I did that and then dropped the island, we see it makes a little bit more sense. As you can see, the fog bank has rolled off the island, and there's a little shoal there that's kind of protected by the island, I guess. Something about the currents. There's probably some math involved, but we are not interested in math except for probabilities, and the probability that this little Portuguese ship can get into the fog bank where it's hopefully safe. They are going to be hitting on 5s on their sailing check. And the Dutch are also going to be hitting on 5s. The Dutch, however, because they rolled snake eyes, they can re-roll those. The Dutch only get 1, and the Portuguese finally get that roll they were hoping for. 3 sailing points to 1 sailing point. And the Dutch are going to have to commit. They're just going to go ahead and move forward the 2 inches. The Dutch up here are going to be able to move 2, and then we'll spin them just a little bit, and they're going to be able to move 2 and 2 more. Now, they do not have the distance between themselves, but what this does is it increases the range bands, and more importantly for them, they are... Oh, you know what? Because of the anchor, they're only hitting on 6s. Oh, that's unfortunate. They're going to stop just shy. They only got 2 sailing points. They're just shy, which means not only are they not in the fog bank yet, but they are in the fire arc. Now, fortunately for them, they are going to be able to, if we drop this down and check our arcs, they are going to be able to return fire, but with these damage tokens, they're only firing at half skill. So I'm going to roll 5 for the Dutch, and based on the distance, it's still going to be hitting on 4s, re-rolling 6s. Instead of rolling 4, the Portuguese are going to be rolling just 2 dice, but they do still get the ability to re-roll the 1s, and that 1 becomes a 3, so they still wind up missing with everything they've got. For their part, the Dutch are going to do 3 damage to this guy, and 3 damage is light damage. The ship gets an additional damage token. Kapow. Now, if the ship fails its damage control discipline check, it strikes its colors and removed from play. The discipline check comes at the end of the sailing phase. You have to remove the damage before you remove the anchor, which means we are going to drop... Well, first thing we do, let's go ahead and move everybody back a couple of inches. And with that done, we can roll for our last shoal. It's going to come on at 4 again. And so it's just going to appear right there. Kind of a crowded little scene so far, but we're not worried about that. We are rolling for 7 sailing dice, only hitting on 6s. He doesn't get any This guy, on the other hand, gets nothing as well, so nobody's going to move, except when you don't, you do get a free sailing point if you're not already in an anchor. So this guy is going to move up to here, and then he's going to turn something like that. We want to make sure, well, not quite, because we want to make sure that he is in this guy's firing arc, and that's going to be the only shot for this. Oh, now we're going to roll for the discipline check here. 5 dice, looking for a 6 to remove 1 of the damage, and we don't get any. Man, it's the dice are just not smiling on our Portuguese. The Dutch now are going to fire their 5 guns, and with a range of 7 inches, they're still hitting on 4s, and that's going to be 3 more, and I think that does it. 3 is light damage, gets an additional damage token on the 4th hit. The ship is sunk. And that's the end of the scenario. The dice, it's a mini game, right? Doesn't take that long. The dice did not come up well for this guy. The terrain did, but he just couldn't get to where he needed to be in order to shift. And honestly, I think the biggest thing was that the wind was just, that shift to the northeast was just too much for him to overcome. I think even if the wind had been, off the straight out of the east, he might have been able to get 45 degrees and just start zooming away. Or even if he started zooming away this way and then cut back into the wind, hitting on 5s, 7 of 4. I really expected the Portuguese to just run away with this, but it just wasn't meant to be. This is why you play the games, because you never quite know what's going to happen. Until next time, I'm praying for you.